So the Biden administration suspends the mask mandate for airports, buses, after judge rules against CDC guidelines. Let's talk about it. My name is Nathan Laurie. If you are new here, we talk about the law and the facts. If you're about that life, don't forget to like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. All right, welcome to the channel. So today we're talking about the CDC's mask mandate for public transportation, for like airports, buses, and so forth, that has just been set aside by a federal judge. Now, just so everyone understands what this was. So the CDC can promulgate rules and regulations under the Administrative Procedures Act. Now, when that act is used properly, an agency can create a rule and the rule is good as long as it doesn't violate the Constitution. This mask mandate, though, is a unique version of that process in which it was put forward under like an emergency rule situation. So generally, what an agency has to do is you have to promulgate a rule or write it down and then have it go through notice and comment rulemaking, which takes about 30 days. Sometimes it could take 2 months, but generally you're talking about 30 days. And during that notice and comment period, people can then talk about the rule, whether they like it or they don't like it. Then the rule goes back to the agency. And if the agency approves the rule, the final version, then it goes into effect. Here, though, the Biden administration felt that that process took too long. That process of going through notice and comment rulemaking, having people do the whole comment for 30 days, it would take too long because the pandemic was important then. So they kind of skipped that process. But to skip that process, you have to have a really, really, really good reason, right? You can't just say, I'm skipping it because it's taking too long. You have to have a really good reason why you didn't go through that process and took this emergency approach. So Biden administration did that, and that was good, right? Okay, you can keep your mask mandate. But that emergency piece of it doesn't last forever, right? At a point, the emergency ends. Right, like if you got in a fire, when the fire is put out, you still don't have those same restrictions because it's like you've changed a little bit. So in this case, now that we're coming to the tail end of the pandemic, it seems like the judge is saying, well, the reasons why you put it in, we're not going to complain about that. Only we're saying, what's the reason why you can't send it through the normal process now, right? Because the emergency's over, right? Or it's ending soon, or it's winding down. And the facts that determine why we needed it then are different than the facts now to determine whether we need it now. So let's read the article to see exactly how the news media is portraying what happened in this case. The Biden administration on Monday suspended enforcement of its mask mandate for airports, planes, and other forms of travel after a judge said that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention overstepped its authority, essentially saying that, yes, even though you said this was an emergency and for emergencies, the emergency is kind of over, and now you need to go through the proper process. U.S. District Judge, what's her name? Catherine Kimball Mizil, an appointee of President Donald Trump, ruled that the CDC failed to properly explain its decision to impose the mandate or follow proper rulemaking procedures. So the judge is being clear, right? Either give us the reason why you want to keep this mandate under this emergency provision, or just follow the law and send it through proper rulemaking instructions. So that's, the judge gave them the two, and the Biden administration said, well, we're just going to drop the mandate. The Biden administration on Monday evening confirmed that travelers can ditch their mask pending a review of the ruling. Agencies are reviewing the decision and assessing the potential next steps. In the meantime, today's court decision means the CDC's public transportation masking orders is not in effect at this time, an administrative official said. And the reason is that this judge in Florida ruled that the rule wasn't properly put in place. So that kind of violates the rule for everybody. That's why. Therefore, TSA will not enforce its security directives and emergency amendment requiring mask use on public transportation hubs at this time. CDC recommends that people continue to wear masks in indoor public transportation settings. Now, just to be clear, they can easily put this mandate back into place if and only if they go through the proper procedure. So it's not like this judge is not ruling that the mask mandate itself is unconstitutional. This judge is just ruling that you didn't follow the proper procedure to keep this mask mandate in place. Almost immediately, Alaska Airlines announced that masks would be optional for travelers and employees alike. which makes sense. American Airlines quickly followed suit, announcing that masks were no longer required on domestic flights and select international flights, depending upon the arrival country's requirements. American Airlines, Delta Airlines, Southwest Airlines, the three carriers with the most passengers pre-pandemic, also made masks optional Monday night. Yeah, I would too, right? It's like, all right. And I think that's the big piece of it here, is that the situation has changed. Though the position that we were in 2020 when the pandemic first occurred is different than where we're at now in 2022, right? The facts have changed. And when the facts change, then the legal analysis changes, because the legal analysis is built upon the facts. So back when you have a new virus, very contagious, you don't really know how it's getting around, and the doctors their only clues are that, it's airborne and masks help, then that's okay in that situation where you're trying to glean how everything is working and you're trying to do the best thing to stop the emergency then. But now we have 2 years worth of data. We understand the process. We have the vaccine. So the facts on the ground are totally different. Now we're not in an emergency situation. Hell, most localities have lifted their mask mandates. So now it's time to kind of move on and either do it under the regular regulations or, just lift it altogether. In New York, the MTA said subway and bus riders would still be permitted to wear masks due to a March 2nd determination by the State Department of Health. So still be permitted, or it's still a force. It's about, I'm permitted to wear headphones, right? But that doesn't mean I have to wear them. I don't get that sentence. We've always, that sentence just doesn't read. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong. It says, and bus riders would still be permitted to wear masks. So in other words, it seems like they'll tell you can't wear a mask after March. I don't know. That's a strange sentence. Maybe that's where they're going. They're going to say, hey, from now on, don't wear masks on the bus or trains. Because our system does not permit agencies to act unlawfully, even in the pursuit of desirable ends. The court declares unlawful and vacates the mask mandate, Zell wrote in her decision. Yeah, and I think this judge is correct, right? You can't just make it up as you go. And true, if you believe masks work and you believe that it's going to stop transmission, that's fine. You can't employ a mask mandate, but you have to do it within the confines of the law. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki called the ruling disappointing, but said the administration had not made up its mind whether to appeal. I don't think an appeal is probably going to be likely, because even on appeal, the question is going to be, okay, so do you still have an emergency? And if it's still an emergency, you got to prove it. And that's essentially what this judge said. If you still have an emergency, just show me the emergency and you can still be good. So this just came out this afternoon. So as of right now, the Department of Homeland Security would be implementing the change, and the CDC are reviewing the decision. And of course, the Department of Justice would make any determinations on litigation. Psaki added, we would say to anyone sitting out there, we'd recommend to wear a mask on an airplane. Fox News correspondent Peter Ducey pressed Psaki to explain why masks on mass transit make sense when people haven't had to wear masks at most indoor venues, including White House briefing rooms for nearly 2 months. And that does make sense, right? If you're telling us we don't have to wear a mask in any indoor venues, then why are you saying that, well, in these indoor venues, you got to wear a mask? It just doesn't, it's not a consistent rule. And I think Peter has a good point. This is based on health considerations and data that the CDC looks at about transmissibility, and we've seen an increase in cases on airplanes, Psaki replied. So now they're going to talk about the decision a little more. Mizell's decision was in response to a July lawsuit filed by a non-for-profit Health Freedom Defense Fund on behalf of 2 women who claimed that wearing a mask on airplanes triggered or exacerbated anxiety and panic attacks. In her 59-page ruling, Mizell said the only remedy was to vacate the rule entirely because it would be impossible to end it solely for 2 plaintiffs. Writing that a limited remedy would be no remedy at all, the judge then remanded the matter for the CDC for further proceedings. In other words, tell me why you need to do it under emergency, or just do it the regular way. Last week, the CDC announced the transportation mask mandate would be extended for another 15 days after it was originally set to expire Monday, citing an uptick in coronavirus cases and claiming it needed more time to examine the BA.2 Omicron subvariant. Wow, we got variant after variant. They're gonna keep money all the time for these variants. Since early April, there has been an increase in the 7-day moving average of cases in the United States. The CDC said in a statement shared on social media, in order to assess the potential impact of the rise of hospitalizations and death the healthcare system capacity, the CDC order will remain in place at this time. The CDC's decision on the mask mandates came just after a federal agency announced it planned ending the Title 42, which allows Border Patrol agents to expel migrants without asylum claims because of the pandemic. Chief executive officers of all major airlines called on the Biden administration last month to ditch the mask mandate because the requirement did not reflect the current environment, which is what the judge said. Right? It makes no sense that people still have to wear masks on airplanes and yet are allowed to congregate in crowded restaurants, schools, and sporting events without masks, despite none of these venues having a protective air filtration system that the aircraft do. To the letter, the letter from the CEO said. So everybody's saying the same thing. This mask mandate thing is stupid. Why do we have it? Biden is like, continue to wear masks. They noted that the vaccination rates were up and that the states across the country were relaxing restrictions before calling the Biden administration to reconsider its policies. We are encouraged, but now one thing, you know now, right? You know now why, as soon as the judge killed it, why they all, no more masks, optional. Because they didn't want the mask either. We are encouraged by the current data and the lifting of the COVID-19 restrictions from coast to coast, which indicate it is past time to eliminate the COVID-era transportation policies, an executive said. So at the end of the day, what do you think? Do you think the judge got it right? I think this federal judge got it right? You can sell me on an emergency 2020, right? Started a pandemic or even at the height of the pandemic. But now, we're in a different world. And these policies have to start addressing the world we live in now and not the world we were living in before. And I think that's the issue with this judge is saying. And again, the judge said, go back, right? You can go back and justify why you need to undo the emergency provision or do it under the regular rulemaking process, right? Either way will be good. And they're not doing either one. They're saying, but just let it go. So this is, sometimes the judicial system does step in and it does work. And this time I think it did. Let me know how you feel about the rest of the mandates. Do you think all of the rest of the mandates should also fall too? Are we finally over the pandemic, or is this fight still going to continue? If anything, let me know in the comment section. My name is Nate the Lawyer and I'm out here. Peace.